This is Carly holding Tessie. Tessie is my barn owl. Tessie will officially be 11 years old this year. When I got Tessie, Tessie was 5 days old, and she basically grew up. The first 6 weeks of her life was the last 6 weeks of high school, and I was teaching high school at the time. So she basically grew up in the high school. So every day, dozens of hands, hundreds of hands were reaching down and petting her and picking her up. And the bells were ringing and the kids were thundering by, and the building echoed with voices. And that's what Tessie grew up to. So Tessie's very used to people. She loves people. Anyhow, so remember we mentioned imprinting. She's very imprinted on me. Barn owls are the most widespread of all the owls. They are found in every continent in the world except for Antarctica. So Tessie's turning 11 this April, well, this month actually, and she can live in captivity to about 26, 27 years. I'm actually hoping that we're going to break the record with her because it'll break my heart when I lose her. All right, so with Tessie, you notice she has a very distinctive face. That face, the heart shape there, they call that the facial disc. Well, the facial disc actually acts like a parabolic reflector. And think about yourselves. If you happen to be listening to something you can't quite hear it, you put your hand behind your ear and you cup your ear, and it helps you hear better. Well, Tessie's facial disc will literally change shape to allow her to hear better, because it focuses sound into the ears. And owls' ears are actually offset. One ear is lower facing down, the other ear is higher facing up. So it helps them triangulate the sounds better. So owls are built specifically to be picking up any kind of sound they can. Owls' ears are located underneath the feathers of the head, inside the facial disc. They're offset. One ear is lower facing down, the other ear is upper facing up, and they're quite large to let in a lot of sound. Then the other thing is they have a flap of tissue that covers that ear that can open and close it depending on how loud or quiet the situation is. And they basically locate their food by triangulating sounds. And they say that, just to put this in perspective, an owl like Tessie here can pinpoint the exact location of a mouse just by hearing it as it rustles through the grass a quarter of a mile away. Which, that sounds amazing. I haven't got to the amazing part yet. Quarter of a mile away, under 2 feet of snow, it can hear a mouse rustling around in the bushes. That is incredible hearing. Years ago, I got a phone call from the Malone airport, and they said, "Hey, can you help us out?" And I said, "Sure, what's going on?" They had a snowy owl that showed up at the Malone airport, and they said it almost got hit by a plane a few times. They were worried about the snowy getting killed. They were worried about people getting hurt. And can I help them catch it and move it? Well, I'm a licensed bander through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And most people don't know this, but airports are required, if a snowy shows up, to harass them till they move. Well, snowies are like big couch potatoes. They're not going anywhere. Or catch it and move it. How many of you guys have caught a snowy owl on your own? Or they're required to shoot them. Well, they tried scaring it off. They didn't want to shoot it, so they contacted the DEC, who put them in contact with me. And I said, "We will definitely help you." Well, we tried all kinds of things, but this bird wasn't getting caught. So what we ended up doing was we dug a hole in the snow. I laid down. My buddy buried me 100% in the snow. He put a pigeon in a cage on my chest, and then he left, and he sat in his truck, and he watched. When the snowy owl showed up, he tooted the horn twice, and then I got the pigeon moving. Well, I laid under the snow for over an hour at negative 26 degrees. We never did catch the owl because here's the thing, their hearing is so good. She could actually hear me, or it could hear me breathing. It could hear my heartbeat. That's how good their hearing is. Golden eagles can spot a rabbit a mile to 2 miles away, barely moving in the brush.
Really?
They say that birds of prey's vision is about 7 times more powerful than humans during the day. At nighttime, the owl's vision is about 200 to 300 times stronger, whereas the hawks, the eagles, the falcons at nighttime, they can't see at all. This is why we've done plenty of bird rescues, raptor rescues at nighttime, grabbing them off perches. Also, we age owls by shining a UV light on their feathers because owls can see into the UV spectrum, and porphyrin, which is a blood plasma protein, reflects reddish raspberry red colors when you shine UV light on it. Okay, so now that brings us to their sense of smell. We've all heard it, and we've all even said it. Don't touch a baby bird because mom will desert it because she can smell the scent. That's actually an old wives' tale. Most birds have a lousy sense of smell. Matter of fact, Tessie, I feed her all kinds of things, and I put things in there to see if she can smell them. She doesn't really react to them. I'll give her rotten stuff, and she figures it's rotten by other ways, by looking at its consistency and that type of stuff. So I got a quick story to tell you. I grew up in Potsdam, just down the road from Canton. And years ago, I was walking through the fields. I had just, come back from grad school, and I was freeloading at my folks' house. And one day I decided I wanted to go through the fields and see what kind of animals I could see. So just as the sun is rising, I'm at least a quarter to a third of a mile from the road. I'm walking through the fields, and as I'm walking through the field, this skunk pops up. Well, at that point, I worked with all kinds of animals. I worked on a bighorn sheep study. I worked on a wolf moose study. At that point, had actually tackled a live wild bear because I worked on a study working with bears. And I had worked with skunk. They're cool, inquisitive little animals, but if they know you're human, they tend to leave you alone. So when the skunk popped up, I waved my arms in the air and I yelled at the skunk, "Hey, scram, beat it, get out of here." Well, the skunk started coming at me. Now I'm a little more concerned because that's very strange behavior for a skunk. And at that point, there were all kinds of articles about how don't go near the skunks because the rabies epidemic is really high. And so I don't know if that skunk was rabid or not, but I didn't want to chance it. So I said, I'm out of here. So I turn around and I'm running through the field. I'm zigzagging back and forth. I'm waving my arms over my head. I'm screaming at the top of my lungs like a crazy man. And I look over my shoulder and the skunk is following me like Pepe Le Pew. And as I'm running, I'm thinking, man, what do I do? The tall grass covered up the rocks, the holes, and the ruts, so I couldn't see where to put my feet, so I couldn't get going. And pretty soon I could hear the raspy breath of the skunk behind me and its breathing as it was closing in on me. So what I ended up doing, through the years, I used to hoot to the owls. And I could get the owls flying in. Well, the great horned owl is the main predator of the skunk. Skunks are petrified of them because great horned owls, if they get sprayed, and I've banded about 2 or 3 dozen that have had that yellowish tinge and reek of skunk, they could care less. They can't even smell it. So I hooted at it, and the skunk bailed, and I got out of there as quick as I could. Here's the thing with Tessie. Remember with Morley, we said we could tell what he's thinking and how he's feeling by looking at his body language. We can do the same thing with Tess, but you notice Tess doesn't have the ear tufts. So we're watching more her body language, plus also her facial disc will literally change depending on how she's feeling too. Another thing you notice with Tess is her eye color is very deep, very dark, very dark chocolate color, where Morley's eye color was orange. Well, eye color can kind of give you an idea of when an owl is most likely to be active. Owls with deep, dark eyes, like a barn owl, a barred owl, tend to be more nocturnal. Doesn't mean you can't see them in the day. They're not vampires. They're not going to burst into flames if sunlight hits them. But that's when they're best adapted. Where if you look at owls with orange eyes like Morley, the Eurasian eagle owl, a great horned owl, those type of owls, an orange to dull yellow eye. They're more what we say are crepuscular, active, most active dawn, dusk, sunrise, sunset. And then owls with the bright lemon yellow eyes, like the snowy owls, the hawk owls, the great gray owls, they're more diurnal. They're more active during the day. Some owls are active during the day. So you can kind of tell when they're active by looking at their eye color. Tessie's been sitting on eggs, and so you can see, if she lets me, there's a brood patch, which is that patch right there, of bare skin. Because what happens, remember, feathers are insulators. And if you're just sitting on the eggs with your feathers, you're not insulating anything. So that they form a brood patch, which is basically the feathers fall out, plus they pluck some out. And that gives them an area of bare skin where they can heat their eggs. And that's what Tessie's eggs look like. I took Tessie off her eggs just the other day. She's been sitting on those eggs for over a month. And they're infertile. They're not going to hatch. And I didn't want her to waste her time and energies on something that's not going to hatch.